The purpose of this video is to give him full instruction as to what's included, how it all works, and then when he receives it he can see what it's all about, how it's put together, and also how to use it. So let's start from the basics. For the system I used one of these cases, first time with them. There's plenty of space inside for what you're required to do, and the plastic is nice strong ABS type. The purpose of course is to try and hold a standard Game Boy Advance into here, but in practice from what I've read it's not a very good case for that, because it can actually crack the system if you bang it about, which rather defeats the purpose. However, for an N64 portable this case is very good to use. You only require relatively minimal board cutting, certainly safe cutting, and there's also good space in here for the PS2 for the PS1 screen, which is what I'm including in this. Just doing this video as one continuous stream, so if there's any little errors in it, well, okay, never mind. Anyway, first thing I had to do was to sand off the edge of this to make it nice and smooth, and of course gut out the internals on this, because of course I wanted it to give me maximum space inside to do what I needed to do. The front of this of course also had to be removed. These areas however were quite handy, because I'm using the larger of the joysticks with the super pad. It actually pretty much fills out this entire area, and as those joysticks are quite deep, again there's plenty of space in here. In point of fact, I could actually put the batteries in here and then have the joystick on top. This space seemed a shame to remove these and then do some other casework, so I use these for A and B, C buttons above, and the rest of it as you'll see in a moment. Also I decided to try and keep this case intact, in other words not paint it and smooth it down. Some of the reasons for that was that there's hinges on the side here. In order to preserve the hinges, which would have probably done some damage to the paint and looked slightly strange, I could have used the screws to put it through and whatever, but this system I wanted to be easy to lower and raise, especially as we're using an EverDrive in here instead of the usual cartridge. So anyway, let's move on to the N64 portable itself. Standard walk around, standard features. Because we're using a EverDrive 2.5, you require when you finish a game to reset it, otherwise it doesn't save the game progress. So got the standard start button here. I've got the volume up and down. I have set the screen to about the best that it is for playing the dark games and the normal games. Nothing is perfect, but it's set at about where I believe the sort of equilibrium is for the image quality. So we're using a PS1 official screen. I've kept the mezzine on it. I think personally it looks quite nice with sort of fuzzier type graphics like you get with the Nintendo systems. If you're doing something like a TurboGrafx, I think it makes good sense to remove it, because then it is slightly clearer. However, in doing so of course you don't then have the protection that the gauze provides the system, so it's not a hard and fast, it is entirely down to personal preferences. So as mentioned, got the larger the joystick here within the size. I haven't had to repaint the case at all. This is the original one with the original colour plastic, which also means it's very rugged. Stereo speakers here of course, standard A and B and the C buttons. I did originally have the C buttons with a clicky tack switch, but I changed those to the standard rubbery ones. These of course have got rubber contact pads as well. These, the start and the reset, those can just be clicky, there's no reason not to. And of course there's a D-pad at the top here. System's been fully tested of course. If we turn it upside down, that's the vent holes for the fan intake, and the fan outtake are these here. On off as standard, I've got these two buttons, which of course are at the bottom when you're holding the system, as being for the Zs, and then there's the left shoulder and the right shoulder here. We have the powering option here, which of course you can run the system directly off the mains transformer, typically like a PS1 power supply. I've got one of these here. I decided for this and for your other systems that you kindly commissioned me to do, I'm going to use the same port. Keeps things nice and simple, so you can run the system off the same supply and also charge it from the same one too. I put a small switch in to run it either off battery or off the mains. The idea is that if you're running it off the mains, it will charge the batteries at the same time, but you don't want to be running the system off the batteries and also charging them. Get sure you can do it, but it doesn't do the batteries any good, simply because the drain is very considerably more than the charging ability of the batteries, so it can cause a bit of damage over the course of time if you're unlucky. So best thing to do if you're running off batteries, don't have it plugged in at the same time. If you do, of course, then that's fine, because you plug it in, run it off the mains, it will charge the batteries. So I put in a little switch here to select between the two modes. So that's the overall of the basic portable. If I open it up now, then you can see what I've achieved by putting everything inside the system. The cartridge is the EverDrive as mentioned, so I've made it easy to access an SD card. I preloaded this with the firmware on it and also a few games on there as well. You can easily just take it out, pop it into an SD reader, put in whatever ROMs that you want. Note the system has to be PAL games, because not only of course is the EverDrive PAL, but the PS1 screen is PAL, otherwise you'll end up with a continual rolling image. But I have put on there a couple of, a game that I particularly like on the system which wasn't released, 40 Winks, and you got the PAL version of that. You also wanted Donkey Kong and one or two others, well those are on the card. Right, other things on the system here, a quick walk around. There's the PS1 screen of course back here, controller. Didn't need to reduce very much of it, so I didn't. No point unless you have to. Stereo speakers of course. Also I haven't reduced on the N64 board. I know that you can, and I know a number of people have done some very extreme cuts, but also, as I've also read, if you cut too many of the ceramic capacitors off the back, you can actually stop some games from saving. So I'm not a great fan of board reduction. On this I haven't actually had to do more than trim the edge and one or two other places. Very safe stuff. So we've got two sets of LiPo batteries, one here, one underneath the charging circuit which is there, so that gives you a total of about 4.5 amps I think it was. The system runs fine for about 2.5 hours between charges. The charger does take about 24 hours to fully recharge the batteries, but heck, if you're using the system mostly as running it off the mains, then of course the battery is secondary, and when you come home in the evening you can always just put it on, turn it on. I mean, ultimately if you have the mains plugged in here and this is off, then it's just going to be charging the batteries, so that's the best course of action. I put in a low LED circuit here. I used a green light rather than the usual red, but if you want to change that, that's fine, it's up to you. It's located inside there underneath the hot glue, which can be easily twisted off. What I've done here, I had thought originally about having this LED connected to that third spot, but it was coming on far too early, so I put it onto the first. There's a little switch here. If you prefer it even less, then you could set it down to the 6.5 volt option and then use one of these, but it's quite obvious with these lights that do illuminate as to where the battery is. This of course up here as being the strongest, and down there as being the weakest. I didn't actually need to put in a low LED anyway, because when I thought about it afterwards, after I made the hole in the top, the PS1 screen does start to wobble in its last minutes before basically its voltage gets too low and then the screen goes off. So that gives you a good early warning to save your game, but of course this does give you a little extra time. So that's the basic overall of the system. Rather than hardwiring the cartridge to the port, which would have been the easier option, instead I made it so that you could extract the card. Reason being, sometimes these EverDrive cards could fail. If it ever did, then you could easily pop it out, change it, and you're back to where you were. So that's the full overview of the system. As you see, it's all quite neatly wired. The only thing that you need to do if you open it up, particularly to change your games, this wire, all the others are connected quite easily, but this one I had to have the extra shielding on. Just basically lift it down, and then that last bit, just twist it like that, and then you can close the system completely. Always nice just to finish it off by closing the system up properly. So there we go. Oh yes, and that switch I was telling you about, as you can see from here, I've got it set actually for when it's in the up position to run off the batteries, and the bottom to be just running off the mains part. So close this up again. Okay, it's quite across. There we go. So switch is already in the up position. Turn the system on. Nothing sort of particularly different on that side than you would expect. Goes into the overdrive. There we go. Game I was talking about, 40 winks, and press the button to select it. I have tested this system on a number of games, including Doom. See, it's found the expansion pack, which is included in there, of course. In fact, I mounted the N64 board upside down so that I could have the cartridge on the flat layer if you needed to change it. It would have been easy the other way around, but I did it that way, really for your benefit. Because I don't actually need to play the game per se, but at least you can see that you've got this one. And as mentioned, you've got the volume control, which of course works as you would normally expect. Anyway, what I'll do actually is I will show this working on Doom 64. I find that Super Mario and also Doom are very, very good games for testing when you make a system, especially with Doom, because if there's any interference with the controller, then the character will strafe one way or the other, or it will appear that the joystick is moving in a direction which it shouldn't be. Also, you can manage the memory if that was applicable, and it gives you a good chance to test all the all the different controls too. Plus the fact it is an extremely good game. As always with these screens, depends on where you tilt it as to the angles. But anyway, just so I can demonstrate to you everything's working good. Joystick, see there's no movement around, it shouldn't be. C buttons, again all those work as you'd expect. And then the Z buttons as covered, you've got one at the top on each side. You've got your strafe, which is that, yeah. And there you go on the other side. As I said, no point actually playing the game per se, but it does all feel nice and easy to utilise. And of course in this game you'd also select your weapon with the A and the B. So, as I say, that's the full system. It's now demonstrated to be working. I must say actually this I think is the best system I've made. I've taken a great deal of care, particularly to make sure that all the buttons are cut out quite precisely, with plenty of freedom for movement, but also hasn't meant I've had to do filling and painting, because I've been able to do what I needed to do with this. And as you see, the PS1 screen fits in very beautifully into the space. So I've done this as a burn-in test. I had it running for 3 hours as it was, just propped up so that the heat could come out, because after all you hold the system up like this. It didn't reset at all, not even once. As you appreciate, even if you put in, like I've got here with a fan, heat sinks, all that sort of stuff, if you leave the system on for long enough it will reset. Even the original console, after 9 hours it would reset itself if you did nothing, because it would overheat. But a normal PlayStation, well, let's be honest about it, a couple of hours, it's probably 1 in 10 I had it like that. So me running it for 3 hours, I haven't got ready for the secret yet. means that I can't remember how to get out. There we go. Yeah. Oh, that's right, it's over that side. There we go. Yeah, there's armor there somewhere. I'll play the game for a while. Yeah, so as I said, basically if you can play the system for 3 hours without it without it falling into problems, then it does what it's achieved. Anyway, thanks for watching, and as you see, very nice system, nice evenly balanced, good volume, and all works great. Thank you for watching.